In the sterile corridors of Raleigh Memorial Hospital, Darius Freeman clutched a faded Polaroid, his fingers trembling against the worn edges. It was him and Tasha, laughing at a 4th of July barbecue, years before sickness stole her light. Now, in the waiting room, the truth hung like a shadow. Tasha, his wife, was moments away from a surgery that might be her last. Darius couldn't meet her eyes as the doctors wheeled her away. He choked out an "I love you" that felt stuck in his throat, while Tasha, frail but with that steady gaze that always grounded him, squeezed his hand. "It's gonna be okay, Darius," she whispered, even though they both knew it might not be. He wanted to believe her, but fear swallowed him whole. The hospital monitors hummed like a cruel chorus, each beep counting down the seconds they had left. Darius needed air, needed to escape the heavy antiseptic smell that reeked of uncertainty. He stepped out of the waiting room, his heart pounding, his footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. That's when he heard it. Muffled voices drifted from a break room, the door cracked open like a window to a secret. "You saw her chart?" a nurse said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I can't believe they didn't tell him about the mistake." Darius froze. His legs buckled as if the floor had vanished. Mistake? What mistake? He edged closer, his heart thumping so loud he feared they'd hear it. The second nurse, hesitant, replied, "It was months ago. Wrong medication. But Dr. Bennett said it's better if he doesn't know. He didn't want a scandal." Tasha's name wasn't mentioned, but Darius knew. It was about her, every word cut like a knife. He gripped the wall, the silver watch on his wrist, Tasha's engagement gift, glinting under the fluorescent lights. How could she be fighting for her life because of a mistake he didn't even know existed? And why hadn't anyone told him? Memories flooded back. Tasha, months earlier, insisting he not worry so much, saying, "The doctors know what they're doing." He thought it was exhaustion, maybe blind hope. Now every word felt heavy with hidden meaning. Did she know? Was Tasha, even in her weakened state, shielding him from this pain? The hallway seemed to spin. Darius wanted to scream, to barge in and demand answers. But before he could move, a young nurse, Maria Gonzalez, appeared in the corridor, her badge swinging on her white scrubs. Her light brown eyes hesitated as they met his, as if she knew he'd heard something he shouldn't have. "Mr. Freeman, the surgery started," she said, her voice soft but tense. "They're doing everything they can." Darius stared at her, anger and despair warring inside him. He didn't know if he could trust anyone in this hospital anymore. But something in Maria's expression, the way her hand shook as she adjusted her cross necklace, hinted that she carried a burden too. He returned to the waiting room, the Polaroid of Tasha still in his hand, the nurse's words burning in his mind. A mistake, a secret, and Tasha fighting for her life while he grappled with what he'd just overheard. If this story's already tugging at your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It means the world to us to keep sharing stories like Darius and Tasha's. And please, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. I'd love to know where these emotions are landing. Darius had no idea, but that whisper in the hallway was just the beginning. The truth he was about to uncover would change everything and lead him down a path he never saw coming. Darius stood frozen in the hallway, the nurse's words echoing like a storm in his mind. A mistake, wrong medication. Dr. Bennett didn't want a scandal. Each syllable was a blow, as if the hospital he trusted to save Tasha had betrayed them both. He clutched the Polaroid, Tasha's smile from that long-ago barbecue now a cruel reminder of what was at stake. His dark brown eyes, sunken from sleepless nights, locked onto the break room's half-open door. He needed to know more. With hesitant steps, Darius crept closer, his heart pounding so loud it seemed to drown out the hospital's monitors. He peered through the crack. The nurse who spoke, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a rumpled uniform, now identified by his badge as Paul, continued. If her husband finds out, it'll ruin Dr. Bennett's reputation, and you know how he is. The other nurse, younger, shook his head nervously. Nobody's gonna tell him. She wasn't even supposed to know, but someone left her chart open. That's how she found out. Darius felt the ground shake beneath him. Tasha knew? His Tasha, who could barely lift her head from the pillow, was carrying a secret this heavy? He remembered months back when she started dodging questions about her treatments, saying only, "Trust the doctors, Darius." He thought it was exhaustion, maybe denial. Now every word took on a new weight. Was she hiding the truth to protect him? To keep him from falling apart? Anger surged, tangled with a guilt that clawed at his chest. Memories flashed. A fight in their cramped kitchen weeks earlier when Darius accused her of not fighting hard enough. "You're acting like you've already given up," he'd shouted, frustrated. Tasha just looked away, her butterfly tattoo catching the dim light. Now, he understood that silence. She wasn't giving up. She was carrying a burden he couldn't imagine. Darius couldn't take it anymore. He shoved the door open, the creak loud enough to startle both nurses. "What mistake?" His voice came out hoarse, trembling with rage. Paul went pale, stammering. "Mr. Freeman, it's not what it sounds like." But the younger nurse looked away, unable to meet Darius's eyes. "Tell me now," Darius demanded, stepping forward, the scar on his chin stark against his tense face. "What did you do to my wife?" Paul tried to deflect. "It was a mix-up months ago. Wrong medication, wrong dose, but it's under control now." Under control? Darius almost laughed at the absurdity. Tasha was in surgery, fighting for her life, and they called this under control? He pressed for more, but Paul dodged, saying only Dr. Bennett could explain. "And he's in surgery now," he added, as if that ended it. Before Darius could respond, an alarm blared down the hall. His heart stopped. It came from the operating room. Maria Gonzalez, the young nurse from earlier, ran toward it, her cross necklace swinging wildly. "Mr. Freeman, come with me," she shouted, her voice thick with urgency. Darius followed, panic flooding his veins. Each step felt heavier, as if he were racing against time to save Tasha, or to uncover the truth she'd hidden. In the waiting room, Maria made him sit, but her light brown eyes flickered with unease, as if she wanted to say more, but couldn't. "The surgery. It's getting complicated," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But they're doing all they can." Darius stared at her, desperate for hope, but all he saw was the same tension he felt. He gripped the silver watch on his wrist, Tasha's gift, and wondered, if she knew about the mistake, why didn't she trust him with it? And what else was this hospital hiding? The truth was closer than he thought, but the cost of uncovering it would be higher than he could bear. Darius Freeman slumped in the hard waiting room chair, Paul's words still thundering in his mind like a relentless storm. A mistake. Wrong medication. She knew. Each thought stabbed deeper, tearing at the image of Tasha carrying a secret that could have broken them both. He stared at the Polaroid in his hands, her smile from that barbecue a painful reminder of everything he'd missed. How had he been so blind? The hospital felt like it was closing in. The hum of monitors, the antiseptic smell, the muffled voices of doctors, all reminders that Tasha was in there, in the operating room, fighting for every heartbeat. And now, knowing about the mistake, Darius felt anger and guilt waging a war inside him. He wanted to storm the operating room, demand answers from Dr. Bennett, the man who, according to Paul, had buried the truth. But what if that cost Tasha her life? What if his rage took her away forever? A memory pulled him back to a night months earlier in their modest Raleigh apartment. Tasha, already frail, insisted on cooking dinner, her dark brown eyes shining with a stubbornness Darius both loved and feared. "You don't have to carry this alone," he'd said, frustrated, as she leaned on the counter, hiding her pain. "I'm not carrying everything," she replied, with a weak smile, her butterfly tattoo glinting under the kitchen light. Now Darius understood. She was carrying more than he ever imagined. Not just the illness, but the weight of a mistake that wasn't hers. The waiting room door swung open, and Maria Gonzalez stepped in, her white scrubs pristine, but her light brown eyes filled with hesitation. She clutched a clipboard, her hands trembling slightly, the cross necklace swaying with each step. "Mr. Freeman," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "The surgery's unstable. Dr. Bennett's doing everything he can, but it's touch and go." Darius felt the air vanish from his lungs. Unstable. The word felt like a verdict. He looked at Maria, searching for any shred of hope, but found only a tension that mirrored his own. "What do you mean, unstable?" Darius asked, his voice hoarse, rising from the chair. Maria hesitated, her eyes darting to the hallway before returning to him. "It's delicate," she said, choosing her words carefully. "But there's something you need to know." She paused, as if fighting herself, then continued, barely audible. "Tasha's records. They're in the file room, West Wing. Room 12. I can't say more than that." Darius frowned, his heart racing. Records. Why was she telling him this now? He saw the guilt in Maria's eyes, the way she clutched her necklace, as if seeking courage. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked, his voice thick with suspicion. Maria looked down. "Because I saw what happened to her. And it's not right." Before Darius could press her, she turned and hurried away, leaving him with more questions than answers. The silver watch on his wrist felt heavier than ever. He glanced at the operating room door, picturing Tasha under those cold lights in the hands of Dr. Bennett, the same man who'd hidden the mistake. Anger urged him to race to room 12, tear through those files, and expose the truth. But Tasha? If he left now, if he lost control, he might lose her forever. He closed his eyes, Tasha's face in his mind, her steady gaze always guiding him. "It's gonna be okay," she'd said before the surgery. But how could it, if the hospital meant to save her was the one that betrayed her? Darius made a choice. He'd stay there by Tasha's side until he knew she was safe. But as he sat back down, a silent vow grew within him. He'd find those files, he'd uncover the truth, and Dr. Bennett would pay for what he'd done. The operating room door opened again, and a nurse he didn't recognize appeared, her face grim. "Mr. Freeman, we have an update." His heart stopped. He stood, the Polaroid of Tasha slipping from his hands to the floor. What he was about to hear would change everything, and he wasn't ready for it. Darius Freeman stood rooted to the spot, his heart pounding, as the nurse before him adjusted her badge, her face etched with a gravity that sent ice through his veins. The Polaroid of Tasha, fallen on the waiting room floor, seemed to cry out for him, but his eyes were fixed on the woman. "Mr. Freeman," she said, her voice steady but trembling slightly, "the surgery's over. Your wife's alive, but she's in a medically induced coma to stabilize her. We don't know when or if she'll wake up." The words struck Darius like a blow, draining the air from his lungs. Alive, but in a coma. Hope and despair collided, leaving him stranded between relief and dread. He collapsed into the chair, his hands shaking as he gripped the silver watch on his wrist, Tasha's engagement gift that felt like his only tether to reality. Images of her flooded his mind. Tasha laughing at the 4th of July barbecue, Tasha masking her pain with a faint smile, Tasha whispering, "It's gonna be okay," before they wheeled her away. And now, she was locked in a silent battle, while the secret of the medical mistake weighed like a stone on his chest. He needed answers. He needed the files Maria had mentioned. Darius rose, anger flaring like a spark. He strode through the hospital corridor, his footsteps echoing with purpose. The West Wing, room 12. Maria's words looped in his head, and he couldn't wait another second. The hospital's cold lights and stark white walls felt like a labyrinth built to hide the truth. When he reached room 12, the door was locked, but the old latch gave way with a firm push. Inside, rows of file cabinets loomed like sentinels of secrets. He found Tasha's chart, her name in crisp print, and began to read. The pages laid bare his worst fears. Months ago, a wrong medication, a toxic dose of a drug meant to stabilize her rare condition, was administered by mistake. The error, scrawled in tiny print like a guilty whisper, had accelerated Tasha's decline. Worse, a note signed by Dr. Richard Bennett ordered, "Do not disclose to patient or family to avoid legal repercussions." Darius's blood boiled. Bennett knew. He knew and chose to shield his reputation over Tasha's life. A memory surged. A consultation months earlier, Tasha, frail, sitting beside Darius as Dr. Bennett, in his spotless white coat and practiced smile, assured them everything was under control. Darius had trusted him. Tasha had trusted him. But now, clutching those pages, Darius saw the betrayal in every word Bennett had spoken. He wanted to scream, to shred the files, but the thought of Tasha, now in a coma, forced him to swallow his rage. He had to be strategic. That night, in the hospital, Darius found Maria Gonzalez again. She stood in the hallway, her light brown eyes heavy with guilt, her cross necklace clutched tightly. "Did you find it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Darius nodded, gripping the chart like a loaded weapon. "Why are you doing this, Maria? Why risk everything?" He needed to know. Maria looked down. "I was there when they found the mistake. I stayed quiet because I was scared of losing my job. But I can't live with that anymore." Darius saw the truth in her eyes. Maria wasn't just an ally. She was someone seeking redemption. He promised to protect her, then asked, "Can you get me more evidence?" Maria hesitated, then handed him a USB drive. "Internal reports. But Darius, be careful. Bennett's powerful. He'll try to crush you." Before he could respond, a shadow appeared in the hallway. Dr. Richard Bennett, with his icy blue eyes and immaculate coat, approached. "Mr. Freeman," he said, his voice calm but dripping with menace. "I hear you're asking questions. Tread carefully. A defamation lawsuit could destroy you." Darius gripped the chart tighter, anger surging through him. He wanted to confront him right there, but Tasha's face in his mind held him back. "This isn't over, Bennett," he said, his voice steady but trembling with emotion. Back in the ICU, Darius sat beside Tasha. She looked so small in the bed, her purple headscarf a burst of color against her medium brown skin. The monitors beeped steadily, a lifeline to her silent fight. He held her hand, her butterfly tattoo cold under his fingers. "I'm gonna make this right, Tasha," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I swear." But as he spoke, a gnawing doubt crept in. What if the truth he was chasing shattered more than just Dr. Bennett? The fight was just beginning, and the stakes were higher than ever. Darius Freeman clutched the USB drive Maria had given him, its weight light in his hand but heavy with the truth that could change everything. Sitting beside Tasha's bed in the ICU, he listened to the steady rhythm of her heart monitor, each beep a reminder that she was still fighting, even in her medically induced coma. Her purple headscarf seemed to glow with life, despite her stillness, a testament to the spirit Darius loved. He squeezed her hand, her butterfly tattoo cold under his touch, and whispered, "I'm gonna make them pay, Tasha, for you." But Dr. Bennett's threat lingered in his mind. A defamation lawsuit could destroy you. He knew the road ahead was a battlefield. Darius found a lawyer, James Carter, a Raleigh local known for taking on tough cases against powerful institutions. In Carter's small office, lined with diplomas and family photos, Darius handed over the chart and USB drive. "Is this enough?" he asked, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. Carter, with pale skin and sharp eyes, skimmed the documents, his brow furrowing. "It's solid," he said, But the hospital will fight dirty. Bennett's a big name. You ready for this? Darius thought of Tasha, her smile he might never see again, and nodded. I don't have a choice. With Carter's help, Darius took the case to the press. A local reporter, Sarah Nguyen, published a bombshell article. Medical error at Raleigh Memorial, a woman in a coma and a cover-up. The story spread like wildfire, sparking protests outside the hospital. Families of other victims came forward, sharing stories of negligence. Darius felt the weight of their pain, but also a flicker of hope. He wasn't alone anymore. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Maria Gonzalez faced her own fight. Doctor. Bennett summoned her to his office, the door closed, the air thick with tension. You know what happens to those who betray this hospital, he said, his blue eyes cold as steel, his college ring glinting on his finger. Maria, clutching her cross necklace, trembled but held his gaze. I didn't betray anyone, she replied, her voice steady despite her fear. You betrayed Tasha. Bennett smirked, a smile that promised retaliation. You'll regret this, Ms. Gonzalez. The hospital struck back, releasing statements branding Darius a desperate man and his claims unfounded. They painted Maria as a disloyal employee. Darius felt the world closing in, but then a miracle. One morning, as he held Tasha's hand, he felt a faint squeeze. Weak, almost imperceptible, but real. Tasha, he called, his heart racing. Her eyes stayed closed, but that small gesture lit a fire in him. The doctors later explained it was a reflex, not a sign of waking, but to Darius, it was a message. She was still fighting. He would too. Darius confronted Bennett in the hospital hallway, surrounded by nurses and patients who stopped to watch. You knew, Darius accused, clutching the chart like a shield. You knew the mistake destroyed her chance to get better, and you lied to save yourself. Bennett, in his pristine coat, laughed, his arrogance spilling over. You're out of your depth, Freeman. Go home before you lose more than you already have. But Darius stood firm. I know exactly who you are, and soon everyone will. Maria, overcoming her fear, made a choice. She testified in a preliminary hearing, presenting internal emails that proved Bennett knew about the mistake and ordered the cover-up. The courtroom fell silent as she spoke, her voice shaking but resolute. Darius looked at her, grateful, knowing the risk she was taking. The press exploded with the news, and the hospital began to crumble under the pressure. Bennett was suspended, but Darius's victory felt hollow. Tasha was still in a coma, and every night by her side was a battle against the unknown. As Darius left the courtroom, Sarah Nguyen approached him. You've shaken things up, Mr. Freeman. What's next? He looked out at Raleigh's skyline, the silver watch glinting on his wrist. He didn't know if Tasha would wake up, but he knew their fight was far from over, and the next step would test him like never before. 2 years had passed since the hearing that shook Raleigh Memorial Hospital, but for Darius Freeman, time seemed to linger in the moments by Tasha's bedside. The ICU room, now as familiar as their Raleigh apartment, carried the scent of antiseptic and the faint promise of hope. Tasha's recovery had been a grueling journey. Months after the surgery, doctors gradually lifted her medically induced coma, but the damage from the illness and the medical error left her with challenges. She struggled to speak, her words slow and halting, and relied on a wheelchair for mobility. Yet her dark brown eyes, once dim, now sparkled with the fierce spirit Darius always loved. Her blue headscarf, a vibrant replacement for the purple one, seemed to carry her defiance. Darius held her hand, her butterfly tattoo warm under his fingers, and felt that, against all odds, they'd found a way forward. The fight against the hospital ended in a hard-won victory. Dr. Richard Bennett's medical license was revoked after the undeniable evidence Darius and Maria Gonzalez presented. The hospital, battered by public outrage, paid a substantial settlement, but Darius never cared about the money. He poured every dollar into the Butterfly Foundation, named for Tasha's tattoo, a nonprofit dedicated to helping victims of medical errors across North Carolina. Families who once felt voiceless now had a champion, and Darius, once shattered by guilt, became a symbol of resilience. Maria Gonzalez, now a trusted friend, left the hospital to join the foundation. Her courage in testifying against Bennett transformed her life. Darius would never forget the day he found her in the foundation's office, sorting files with the same determination she showed in court. "You changed everything, Maria," he said, his voice thick with gratitude. She smiled, her cross necklace catching the light. "So did you, Darius. Tasha's proud of you." And for the first time in years, Darius believed it. A memory took him back to a dark night, months after the hearing, when despair nearly won. Tasha was still in a coma, her presence so distant he feared he'd lost her forever. Sitting by her bed, tears falling, he confessed, "I don't know if I can keep going, Tasha, not without you." That's when he felt that faint squeeze in her hand, a spark of hope that carried him through her long recovery. Months of therapy, small victories, and Tasha's unyielding spirit brought them to this moment. In the final scene, Darius and Tasha visited a quiet cemetery outside Raleigh. They stopped at the grave of a young woman, another victim of a medical error, whose story had fueled their fight. Tasha, in her wheelchair, her blue headscarf bright under the sun, gripped Darius's hand. "You made a difference," she said, her voice slow and strained, each word a testament to her strength. Darius looked at her, the silver watch gleaming on his wrist, and replied, "We did, Tasha. Together." Their eyes locked, a silent bond stronger than words. Her butterfly tattoo seemed to flutter with life. The narration closed, gentle and powerful. The truth Darius chased nearly broke him, but it also set him free. He and Tasha turned their pain into purpose, proving that even in the darkest storms, hope can rise, and somewhere a butterfly still flies. If Darius and Tasha's story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment with the word HOPE, where you're watching from and what time it is there now. I can't wait to see how far this story's traveled.